If you really stop and look at the infrastructure of our modern world, almost everything we build is essentially a monument to this one really intense human craving.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, I'm talking about the comprehensive insurance policies that cover like everything from our phones to our health,
Right.
the multi-camera home security networks we monitor from our pockets, the diversified retirement accounts.
Even like the lane assist technology in our cars, right?
Exactly. Or the obsessive tracking of our biometric data. We are essentially trying to build an impenetrable fortress around ourselves.
We want a guarantee.
We want a guarantee. We are just desperate for a guarantee that the unpredictable, jagged edges of reality won't actually cut us.
Yeah, we want a dashboard for our lives where every single light is green.
Right.
And where every variable is under our absolute control.
And it's the driving force behind so much of human innovation, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we spend vast amounts of energy, wealth, emotional bandwidth just trying to engineer a zero-risk existence.
Yeah, we want to insulate ourselves from the chaos.
We do, but the profound irony, and I think we all know this on a visceral level, even if we try to ignore it,
right.
is that true control is largely an illusion.
Yeah, it really is.
Because no matter how many safety nets you weave, the chaos of the world still finds a way to, slip through the gaps.
That way it doesn't.
Illness happens, economies crash, accidents occur, the zero-risk life, it just doesn't exist.
It doesn't. And, that intense friction between our deep psychological need for absolute safety and the utterly chaotic reality of the world we actually live in, well, that's what makes the concepts we're exploring today so incredibly fascinating.
I completely agree.
Because today, we are doing a deep dive into a theological analysis of an ancient promise. Specifically, the ideas anchored in an in-depth commentary on Psalm 91.
And this is a text that essentially looks a fragile, vulnerable human being right in the eye and promises no evil will befall you.
Which is just a staggering claim.
It's almost outrageous, really.
It is. Especially when you consider the ancient context it was written in,
Right, a world without modern medicine.
Exactly. Without geopolitical stability,
Right.
A world where life was brutally short and danger was just like a daily reality.
It's a massive, sweeping claim. And the tension you just highlighted is, it's the central problem that any serious analysis of this text has to confront.
The elephant in the room.
Precisely. You have this ancient absolute promise of divine protection on one side, right?
Right.
And on the other side, you have the undeniable lived experience of hardship. I mean, every single person listening to this knows what it is to experience loss or illness or just sudden tragedy.
Absolutely.
Some of the most faithful, devoted people on earth have suffered horribly. So the question that kind of hangs over everything we're going to discuss today is this: how do we reconcile that apparent contradiction?
Yeah, how does that work?
How can a theological framework promise absolute protection in a world where we clearly see people suffering? Does the promise hold up, or is it just ancient wishful thinking?
I really want to dig into that contradiction because I don't think we can just gloss over it with platitudes.
No, we definitely can't.
But before we get to the mechanics of how this protection supposedly works or, doesn't work, we really have to look at the source of it.
The protector.
Yes, exactly. The foundation of this entire framework rests on the character of the protector.
Right.
And the analysis points out that the text doesn't actually start with the promises, right? It starts by defining who is making them.
It uses titles.
Yeah, titles like the Most High and the Almighty. And the author's argument here isn't just that this entity is, really strong or really capable.
No, it's a categorical difference.
Right. It's that this entity is categorically different from anything else in existence.
And that is a crucial distinction to make. The theological concept of the Most High, it means exactly what it sounds like. There's literally nothing above it.
Nothing.
It signifies the exalted ruler of the universe, who is ultimately responsible for vindicating the innocent and judging the wicked. The argument is that this being is more powerful than the sum of all things combined.
And just think about the weight of that for a second. If you take every physical force in the universe, like every hurricane, every supernova, every human institution, every military complex.
Every microscopic threat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every geopolitical movement. And you put all of that onto one side of a cosmic scale, this theological framework argues that the Most High, outweighs it completely.
It tips the scale entirely.
Exactly. And the specific phrase from the author that really stuck out to me is that God cannot be one-upped by anyone or anything.
I love that phrasing.
Right. There is no strategic maneuver,
Hmm.
no surprise attack, no loophole that catches this sovereign off guard.
And, that absolute unchallengeable supremacy is really the only logical basis for the believer's security. Well, think about it. If the protector could be outsmarted or overpowered or even just exhausted, then the promise of protection becomes conditional.
It's flawed.
Exactly, it's flawed. But if the protector is truly the Most High, then the sanctuary he provides is completely unassailable.
Wow.
The text itself says, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust."
Right. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well,
Because to help us wrap our minds around what that protection actually looks like, the text uses this brilliant dual imagery.
the metaphors are incredible.
They really are. It doesn't just give us one picture. It gives us two completely contrasting metaphors side by side in the first 10 verses.
Right.
On one hand, you have the image of a shield and a fortress.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you have the image of wings and feathers.
Yeah.
Verse 4 says, "He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you may seek refuge. His faithfulness is a shield."
What's fascinating here is that juxtaposition. It's anthropomorphism, right? Attributing physical traits to the divine to communicate something really profound about the nature of this care.
And I really want to break down how functional these two metaphors are for you listening.
Yeah.
Because they represent two entirely different mechanisms of security.
Okay, yeah.
Let's take the shield first.
Oh.
Let's really visualize this. When you think of an ancient, heavy bronze shield, maybe bearing a lion crest and the words, "His faithfulness," stamped across it,
Oh, I like that image.
or the unyielding stone walls of a fortress, you are thinking about martial defense.
Right.
A shield is hard. It is impenetrable. It is literally designed to dislike the blow of an enemy sword or the strike of an arrow.
It's a barrier.
Exactly. It represents a physical militant barrier between you and destruction.
Mhm.
It's the security of knowing the wall won't break.
Yes, the shield represents the robust, active defense against external attacks. It's the promise that hostile forces will meet an unyielding barrier.
Right.
But, and this is important, the shield alone is cold.
Mm-hmm.
It's metallic. It's purely functional.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's why the second image is so vital. The wings and the feathers.
Right.
Picture glowing, ethereal angel wings spread over a rugged mountain peak beneath a starry sky. Think about a mother bird shielding her chicks in a nest. That isn't cold or metallic. It is intimate, nurturing, and incredibly warm. And mechanically, it works entirely differently than a shield.
How do you mean?
Well, a shield deflects a blow by being harder than the weapon, right?
Right.
But a mother bird protects her young by covering them with her own body. She doesn't deflect the danger, she absorbs it.
Oh, wow.
There are these incredible sort of heartbreaking stories of forest fires sweeping through an area, and later, rangers find the charred remains of a mother bird on the ground.
Oh, I've heard about this.
Yeah. But underneath her burned wings, the chicks are completely alive and safe.
That's amazing.
She took the fire so they wouldn't have to.
That is such a powerful way to conceptualize it. The theology here is that divine protection isn't just one note.
Mm-hmm.
It addresses the totality of the human experience.
Mm.
Because we face external threats that need the unyielding barrier of a fortress, the shield.
Right.
But we also face internal terrors, psychological anxieties, the deep vulnerability of just being human in a broken world.
Exactly.
And for that, we need the intimate, absorbing, personal presence that the wings represent. The argument the author makes is that because of this dual nature of protection, the believer can actually be at peace.
And the text gets incredibly comprehensive about what we are being protected from, too.
It really covers all the bases.
It does. It talks about the terror by night, the arrow that flies by day, the pestilence that stalks in darkness, and the destruction that lays waste at noon.
Right, day and night.
Yeah, it's covering every conceivable shift on the clock and every conceivable type of threat. It covers the invisible, microscopic virus that you can't see coming and the visible, literal weapon aimed right at you.
Mm-hmm.
But this actually leads us to a claim made in the analysis that honestly made me stop and push back a bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
The argument is made, quite bluntly, that under this protection, the believer is invincible until his or her time is up.
Ah, yes. The concept of conditional invincibility. It is a bold assertion by the author.
It is. And I have a real problem with the word invincible here.
Ah,
Because when people hear invincible, we think of Superman, right?
yeah.
We think of a magical force field where bullets just bounce off our chests, we never get a flat tire, we never get a scary diagnosis, and our bank accounts never drain.
Right.
But we just established at the beginning of this conversation that that is categorically untrue. Faithful people get hurt, they experience tragedy.
They absolutely do.
So how on earth can we use a word like invincible? It feels almost, I don't know, insulting to someone currently walking through a deep crisis.
I completely understand that pushback, and it's entirely valid if we define invincibility in a superficial comic book sense.
Right.
But the theological framework here hinges entirely on the second half of that phrase, until his or her time is up. The argument isn't that believers live in a sterilized bubble where they are immune to the friction of a fallen world. The text itself acknowledges that danger is everywhere. It talks about 1,000 falling at your side.
True. Yeah.
The core mechanism of this invincibility is explained through the concept of divine permission.
Divine permission.
Yes. The assertion is that absolutely nothing can touch the believer except what the sovereign expressly permits.
Okay, let's really chew on that idea of the divine filter. Nothing can touch us except what he permits.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm listening to this and I'm in the middle of a massive storm in my life, say a job loss, a divorce, a chronic illness,
Right.
this theological framework is arguing that this tragedy didn't just sneak past the bronze shield. It wasn't an arrow that God was too distracted to catch.
Exactly.
If I am truly dwelling under those wings, then whatever has reached me, however painful, had to first pass through the sovereign filter of the Most High.
Precisely. And that fundamentally shifts the paradigm of suffering for the believer.
How it-
Well, it removes the terror of random, meaningless chaos. If you believe the protector cannot be outsmarted or overpowered, then a trial that reaches you isn't evidence that the fortress has failed.
Or that God is weak.
Right. It means the trial has a permitted purpose within a wisdom that is higher than our own.
That is a heavy, heavy reality to hold.
It is.
It means that walking through a permitted trial doesn't negate the protection. The text talks about seeing the recompense of the wicked, basically witnessing the natural destructive consequences of a world that rebels against its creator.
And we live in that world.
We do. We feel the shockwaves of that destruction. But the takeaway for the believer is that your ultimate standing, your core identity, and eternal safety in the Most High is never in jeopardy.
Right.
You are invincible to anything that falls outside of God's sovereignly permitted plan. Nothing can accidentally destroy you.
And the key condition for this reality, as the author points out from verses 9 and 10, is making the Lord your dwelling place, your refuge.
Yeah, your dwelling place.
It's not about treating God like a panic room you only sprint into when the alarm goes off. A dwelling place is where you live. It implies an abiding, continuous relationship.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of how this protection operates in the physical realm.
Right. Verses 11 and 12.
Exactly. The text transitions from these beautiful metaphors of wings and shields to something much more literal and, frankly, highly debated: angels. It introduces the idea that God actively commissions spiritual beings to watch over humanity.
Yeah, these verses are arguably some of the most explicit texts regarding the activity of guardian angels. For he will give his angels charge concerning you, to guard you in all your ways. They will bear you up in their hands, that you do not strike your foot against a stone.
It's a very vivid picture.
It is. It introduces a fascinating layer to the theology of protection. God isn't just an abstract force. He employs an active spiritual administration to execute his protective will in the physical world.
Right. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because this introduces a massive psychological trap. And we see this trap play out historically in a very famous narrative twist from the source material.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
These exact verses about the angels catching you before you strike your foot, they were quoted directly by Satan during the temptation of Jesus in the wilderness.
Matthew chapter 4.
Yes.
It is one of the most brilliant and insidious moments of temptation recorded. The adversary doesn't attack Jesus with a threat, he attacks him with a promise.
Wow, yeah.
He uses the very guarantee of God's absolute protection as a weapon to induce presumption.
He essentially says, hey, if you're the Son of God and this text promises you absolute invincibility and an angelic rescue team, prove it.
Yep.
Throw yourself off the pinnacle of the temple. Let's see the angels work.
And this is where I want to push on the implications for us today.
Sure.
Because if I genuinely believe that God has an angelic shield around me and that nothing can happen to me unless it's my time, why should I exercise caution in anything?
That's the trap. Right. Why should I wear a seatbelt? Why should I look both ways before crossing the street? Why not take massive, unreasonable risks? If the outcome is completely sovereign, my choices shouldn't matter. Sounds like a recipe for sheer recklessness.
And that right there is the definition of presumption, which is the counterfeit of faith.
The counterfeit of faith.
Exactly. The psychological trap is the belief that divine promises exist to subsidize our foolishness or our desire for spectacle.
Oh, that's good.
The author draws a very sharp line here regarding literal interpretation versus presumption. Jesus entirely rejects the devil's framing. He refuses to deliberately put himself in danger just to see if God would miraculously deliver him.
Right.
He refuses to jump, and he quotes another scripture, "You shall not put the Lord your God to the test."
So testing God is basically manufacturing a crisis just to demand a rescue.
Yes.
It's trying to force God's hand. It's treating the angels like a divine concierge service, obligated to do parlor tricks to validate our egos.
Exactly. Faith is trusting God's protection while you are walking in the path of obedience. Presumption is demanding God's protection while you step completely outside of his will for the thrill of the risk.
That makes a lot of sense.
The text says the angels will guard you in all your ways, and the theological understanding is that these are the ways of righteousness, the paths you are actually called to walk.
That makes so much sense. I remember reading about historical figures, missionaries, or activists who walked into incredibly hostile, dangerous territories. They weren't doing it because they had a death wish or because they were testing gravity. They were doing it because they had a deep conviction that they were called to a specific task.
Right. The purpose was clear.
They accepted the risk because it was tied to obedience. That is fundamentally different from, like, a tourist wandering into a war zone for an Instagram photo and expecting divine immunity.
That is the exact distinction the author makes. And there's another fascinating example in the life of Jesus that perfectly illustrates this.
Oh, that.
Later on in Luke 10, Jesus sends his disciples out on a preaching mission into towns that might be hostile to them. And he uses language that directly echoes Psalm 91.
Oh, right. The part about the serpents.
Yes, he talks about giving them authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and that nothing will injure them.
Right. Verse 13 of Psalm 91 explicitly mentions treading upon the lion and the cobra. So Jesus is referencing this exact same promise of protection.
Yes, but the context is paramount here. The theological line is drawn between faithful obedience and testing God.
Right.
Jesus is giving his disciples this assurance because he is sending them out to do his work. The intention is to free them from paralyzing anxiety so they can focus on their mission.
That makes sense.
He is absolutely not telling them to go find a pit of venomous snakes and jump in just to prove a point. The promise of invincibility is functionally tied to the purpose of the believer.
Wow.
As long as there is work God intends for you to do, you are secure in doing it.
That shifts the whole perspective.
Yeah.
The protection isn't just about preserving my physical comfort. It's about preserving me for a purpose.
Exactly.
It stops anyone from using these promises as an excuse for reckless, adrenaline-seeking behavior. You don't test the boundaries of a fortress just to see if the walls will crack.
No, you don't.
You trust the fortress so you can sleep at night and do your work during the day.
Which logically brings us to the next profound shift in this theological framework, moving into verses 13 through 16.
Okay.
Once you establish that the protection is about purpose and not just physical preservation, the text moves into exploring what the ultimate goal of the believer should be.
And it isn't just a life devoid of danger.
Far from it. The final verses of this text reveal a deep, inseparable link between knowing the protector and experiencing true satisfaction.
Yeah, the text really shifts perspectives in verse 14.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time, it's not the narrator talking about God. It's God himself speaking.
Right, the voice changes.
And the promises are incredibly expansive. Because he has loved me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him securely on high, because he has known my name. He will call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With a long life, I will satisfy him and let him see my salvation.
Notice the preconditions for all these promises in the text.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't because he followed a set of rules or because he figured out a theological puzzle.
Right.
The condition is intimacy. Because he has loved me, because he has known my name. The author makes a profound theological argument here that deliverance and satisfaction are inextricably tied to devotion.
That feels like the core truth of this whole analysis, really. I mean, we started this conversation talking about how desperate humans are for a zero-risk life. We want the safety.
I do.
But the author is arguing that you can't just separate the protection from the protector.
No, you can't.
It's not a transaction where you say a magic prayer, get your bronze shield, and then walk away to live however you want. The closer your fellowship, the more you actually know the character of the Most High. The more he reveals himself, and ultimately, the more he satisfies.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author references Ecclesiastes 2 and Romans 10. And there is a phrase in the underlying theology here that I think is incredibly clarifying.
It's that.
God owns satisfaction.
God owns satisfaction.
Yeah.
Let's really unpack that, because in an economic sense, if someone owns a resource, they have a monopoly on it.
Right.
It's a proprietary asset. If God owns satisfaction, it means you literally cannot acquire true, lasting human fulfillment from any other source in the universe.
Exactly. You can acquire pleasure from other sources.
Sure.
You can acquire distraction, temporary thrill, or the illusion of security.
Right.
You can build your massive portfolio, install your security cameras, and curate a perfectly healthy diet.
Right. All the things we talked about at the beginning.
But you could have all of those things, be perfectly safe in a luxurious padded room, and still be utterly miserable. True. Soul-deep satisfaction is not a byproduct of physical safety or material accumulation. True fulfillment is a direct result of knowing God's name and calling upon him.
It's the hedonic treadmill.
Oh, completely.
We think, if I just get this promotion, if I just get this diagnosis cleared, if I just get to this level of financial security, I'll be satisfied.
Then I'll be happy.
Right. And we get there, and the goalpost moves. The anxiety just attaches itself to something else.
Yeah.
Because we are trying to extract satisfaction from things that do not possess the capacity to give it.
Exactly.
If God owns satisfaction, the only possible way to experience it is to be in a relationship with him.
And that completely upends the modern pursuit of a good life. The text asserts that God promises the godly the satisfaction of seeing his deliverance.
Right.
Believing in him ensures one will not be disappointed. It shifts the believer's goal from merely seeking safety to seeking a deeper relationship with the divine.
It means that while the external circumstances of your life might be turbulent, the internal reality, the core of who you are, is anchored in a satisfaction that circumstance cannot touch.
Yes.
Okay, this is where we have to hit the brakes and deal with the biggest, most undeniable reality check of this entire conversation.
I know what you're going to say.
Because we've built this beautiful, airtight theological case, right?
Yeah.
We have the impenetrable fortress, the divine filter of permission, the guardian angels, the promise of purpose, and this proprietary guarantee of ultimate satisfaction.
Right.
But if we're being intellectually honest, and the analysis we are studying forces us to be, we have to confront the massive elephant in the room presented by the author.
The problem of suffering and death among the faithful.
Exactly. If God promises rescue and long life, how do we explain godly people dying young?
It's the ultimate question.
Because the text explicitly promises, in the voice of God, I will rescue him and honor him. With a long life, I will satisfy him. But we all know that is not always the reality we see. We know godly, deeply devoted people who died young. We know about the Christian martyrs, people like Jim Elliot, or the early church believers who were literally thrown to lions.
Right.
They loved God.
Yeah.
They knew his name. And yet, their lives were violently cut short. They were not rescued from the spear or the arena.
No, they weren't.
So what does this all mean? If the promise is long life and rescue, doesn't the reality of the martyr make these ancient promises feel not just hollow, but demonstrably false for the listener facing a real-world crisis today? Does this mean God is unfaithful?
It is the single most critical challenge to this text. If you read Psalm 91 as a promise confined entirely to biological existence on this side of eternity, then yes, the promise fails.
Right.
If long life strictly means making it to your 85th birthday with a good pension, then the text is unreliable. But the theological resolution to this tension requires a massive foundational paradigm shift in how we define life itself.
So how does the theology resolve it? How do you look at a believer whose life is tragically cut short by illness or violence and say the promise of Psalm 91 still holds?
By understanding the author's ultimate theological resolution, These promises of rescue, honor, and life normally find fulfillment in this temporary existence, but they absolutely, invariably find their ultimate fulfillment on the other side of the grave.
Oh, wow.
The framework asserts that human existence does not end at biological death. If you view life through the lens of eternity, the temporary death of the physical body is not the end of the story. It is a transition.
Okay, that changes the math completely.
It really does.
We are measuring long life in decades.
Yeah.
We think hitting 90 years is a victory. But the divine metric for a long life isn't decades, it's eternity, it's infinite.
Precisely. And there is a fascinating historical and scriptural precedent for this that the author unpacks. The theology points to the transfiguration of Jesus in Matthew 17.
Oh, right, where Moses and Elijah appear to him.
Yes, think about that. These are men who experienced physical death centuries prior, yet there they are, fully alive, fully conscious, actively participating in the unfolding reality of God's plan.
Right.
It proves the assertion that life extends beyond the grave. And because it does, the ultimate vindication of the believer is not necessarily escaping a temporary physical death.
It's the resurrection.
Yes. The text argues that God will grant ultimate deliverance to his own, even if he allows them to suffer and die at the hands of enemies in this life.
Right, because the story isn't over.
Exactly. The martyr who dies in the arena is not abandoned. Their rescue is simply an eternal one. They step from the violence of this world directly into the unhindered satisfaction of the Most High.
Wow.
And the ultimate preview of this is the resurrection of Jesus Christ himself. He was not spared the physical agony of the cross, but he defeated death itself. And the promise to the believer is that they will share in his indestructible life.
Indestructible life. That phrase is breathtaking. It ties everything we've talked about together.
It does.
Remember earlier when we argued about the word invincible, we said the believer is invincible until his or her time is up.
Right.
But now we see that even when their time is up biologically, they are still invincible. The invincibility isn't just about delaying a physical funeral. It's an eternal invincibility. You literally cannot be destroyed.
That is the ultimate theological triumph of the text. And there's a verse in Isaiah chapter 54, verse 17, that beautifully synthesizes this entire reality.
What does it say?
It says, "No weapon forged to be used against you will succeed. You will refute everyone who tries to accuse you. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their vindication is from me." The theological insight here is that weapons might be forged against you. They might even be permitted to strike you. They might cause temporary pain or even end your biological existence, but they cannot succeed.
They cannot succeed in destroying your ultimate standing.
No.
They cannot separate you from the love of God.
Yeah.
They cannot steal that eternal satisfaction that God owns.
Exactly. Our God is invincible, and so are his people when he fulfills his promises to them. One way or another, believers will share in Christ's indestructible life.
That's amazing.
The ultimate historical fulfillment of all these promises points toward a reality where death is entirely eradicated.
Right.
But even now, in the midst of a broken, chaotic world, the believer is guaranteed that the grave is not a defeat. It is simply a doorway into the complete, unhindered fulfillment of Psalm 91. The ultimate rescue always happens.
This has been an incredibly profound journey.
It really has.
I mean, we started with the very human, very modern obsession with building a zero-risk life, the dashboards, the insurance, the anxiety.
Right.
We looked at the character of the Most High, understanding the brilliant duality, the intimate feathers, and the impenetrable bronze shield.
The two types of protection.
Exactly. We wrestled with the mechanics of this protection, the reality of guardian angels, and the crucial distinction between faithful obedience and the foolish trap of presumption.
Not testing God.
Right. We explored the idea that God holds the absolute monopoly on true satisfaction, meaning we have to seek the protector, not just the protection. And finally, we confronted the hardest reality of all suffering and death, only to discover that the promises of Psalm 91 are not constrained by our mortal lifespans. They are anchored in the indestructible life of eternity.
It completely reframes how we view our existence. And I think the most powerful thing we can do with a theological framework like this is apply it to the reality of our actual daily lives.
Definitely.
If you are listening to this and you truly internalize what this ancient text is arguing, that your ultimate safety is eternally secured, and that nothing can happen to you without divine permission, and that even the worst case scenario of death is ultimately defeated,
Yeah.
how should that radically change the way you calculate risk tomorrow? How should it change how you face your daily anxieties or step into the unknown?
It changes everything. I mean, if the jagged edges of reality can't actually touch your eternal standing, then maybe that zero-risk dashboard we're all so desperate for isn't actually what we need.
Right.
Maybe the goal isn't to frantically control every variable to avoid getting hurt. Maybe the goal is simply to know we're dwelling in the right fortress, under the right wings, and to step out into the chaos with the quiet, unshakable confidence of an indestructible life.
Well said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We'll catch you next time.